Hey, citizens, Anthony, the internet politician here, and I want to follow up on a video I did a while back about being woke and going broke. And it's more about why we are where we are in the social climate now, politically speaking. And the crib notes is it's the internet, reason why. I guess let's just go back to reminding you what woke meant. And it was an African-American term to basically people who become aware of the injustices placed against the African-American community in the United States. Aware of and actively attentive to important social facts and issues is the Merriam-Webster definition. And I want to kind of go through like a process I had come up kind of just in my head, and I figured out kind of what it was. So let's say 2,000 years ago, when we had news, it took a long time for it to propagate, and it also took a long time for a lot of people to even know about it. And that's because things were chiseled or written on scrolls, and typically news wouldn't escape whatever group they were in. So if something happened with this person in this hut here, the person across the little village might hear about it, but nobody outside the village is going to hear about it. We move progress through time. Things get a little bit faster with the printing press, Gutenberg. Now books can be created in mass quantities. Information can be sent out in long distances. There's ships. There's eventually trains. We get to the 1800s when we have the Pony Express and Western Union. You got telegraph. Things get faster, but the kicker here is at this point, Pony Express and the telegraph are super expensive, so a whole lot of people aren't using it. So what's happening is the information being sent must be super important, which also very few people are sending it. Again, super expensive. Then we get to more modern times. Now, this is where I go back to the 1980s. Now, the internet existed like in the universities back in the 60s and 70s, but when free nets or free internet access popped up, the bulletin board system and such. For example, my first time on the internet was 1988, and the connection we had a Commodore 64 with a 600 baud modem, which I think is half a K a second, more or less. You could generally load a whole text, 80 lines of text, or not necessarily 80 lines, but the screen is 80 lines, but you can get a page of text real quick, real easy. Then as you scroll down, more would load, and you didn't scroll like the normal scroll. You literally was a page at a time. 1989, 1990, we got the 1200 baud modem, blazing speed. But of course, we're on the internet, and information is still selective. It still slowly trickles out. You got to know the groups. Everything's IP based. There's no domain names yet. So very few people were keeping up with advances in politics and technology, etc. Then we move into the 1990s. I remember we got the 14.4 modem, we got the 28.8 modem, and we're talking K. We're talking kilobits here. 33.6, and then we get to 56K. And we're like, okay, this is moving. And that 56K time, that's about when internet started getting images. So we went from super fast loading text pages to moderately loading pages with some stupid. But the point is, that's when we started getting domain names, and that's when websites started to become more popular. But we're still not even year 2000 yet. We're not even broadband. And information is still among the select groups of individuals who connect to the internet. And otherwise, you had to rely on your basic cable package to get like CNN, Then we finally get to broadband. We're talking early 2000s. I think our connection was 128K, so it was like double the dial-up, and it still came over telephone lines. It was DSL. And still, not everybody had internet. I mean, how to put this? There was something about a whole bunch of people had computers, like Apple IIs, but very few people had internet. This is still the case here. A lot more people with computers had internet, but it wasn't more than younger people or young parents with children. So it was still hobbyist domain, basically. And we get progress to now this last decade, the 2020s. And late 20 teens, internet is what do they say? 80% of the world has access, because if it isn't via a phone, which is why people get news so much faster now, phones. But if it wasn't via the phones, it was via computers or tablets or other devices that are all just internet accessible, internet ready. And that is why we are where we are now, because news travels so much faster. And the problem is, all that faster traveling news also includes false information. And that false information now is spreading as quickly as relevant and true information. And here's the problem with being anti-woke. You are overwhelmed with information, and you wish to go back to a time when not all of this was blasting you in the face. And I think that's the case for most people. My parents specifically, other people of their baby boomer generation, people older than that. It's just it's information overload, just a lot coming at you all at once, and you wish for simpler times. The problem is we have progressed in society year upon year. We're going future for future. But the problem is, again, information is just too fast. There's too much of it. Back in the old days, you could read a newspaper and decide what to read. Now you kind of just get blasted in the face with an ad that's politically motivated, or you get blasted in an ad that's advertising to something you don't care about, or an ad about somebody else's live stream that talk about topic. It is just a lot, and I get it. I have my own opinions. I am a centrist, in the middle here. I'm an independent. I like doing my own research. I don't want to dive in because my family, mostly Democrats, are on board without looking up these people. There are, and I'm going to steal something that's so badly dated. There are good people on both sides, but with that, there are bad people on both sides. There are Democrats and Republicans who are so set in their ways that they do not want progress to happen. They will do anything they can to stop it, and that's problematic. I have a philosophy, and it's fairly simple. If what you're doing doesn't negatively impact me, have at it. You want to smoke pot? Do it in your house. I don't got to smell it. You want to have a gender change? You know what? It doesn't impact me. Have at it. You want to work from home? Great. As long as you're paying your taxes, I don't care, because your taxes do impact me in some way. There's like so many other things. Like, I don't understand why, like women's rights. I'm a guy. I really don't have a say. I feel like I don't have a say, and I don't want to have a say in how a woman handles her own body, how she treats herself. Baby or not, that is her right. Like, I don't want a woman telling me how I can handle my business. When I go see a doctor, I prefer a male doctor because he knows what's going on. You know, he has it himself. You know, I really am uncomfortable with female doctors when it comes to this more personal stuff. And that might be a little bit of the I'm an older guy, you know, but it's a little bit of an intimidation factor. But it's still, you feel better knowing that the person who is giving you medical advice is equipped to have that experience. As a woman giving a man medical advice, or a man giving woman medical advice, we can't relate. There is, like, I mean, there's situations in life we could relate, but for our bodies, there is no, I have no right to tell any woman what she can do with her body. Just like I have no right to tell any individual that it's not okay for them to decide that they're, you know, they don't feel comfortable in their own body and feel like they need to be a different gender. I'm still confused about the they them thing, but you know, it's the non-binary thing is weird to me. But I also grew up in a time where there were zeros and ones. That was it. So, but you know what? Again, it doesn't impact me. So let them be non-binary. A lot of the problem is people are so worried about changes. Like, okay, the green M&M. They made her more politically acceptable. They gave her comfortable shoes. They gave her stockings. Still voiced by Cree Summer. Doesn't matter. People got upset about it. Potato Head. For the longest time, Mr. Potato Head had the parts for the kid, for the female, and for the male Potato Head. Calling him Mr. Potato Head and allowing him to have the parts of the female Mrs. Potato Head made him transgender, or made him cross-dresser. Nobody had a problem with that, but the moment they PC'd it up, then they had a problem with it. You do realize by saying not my potato head. You're endorsing the thing you claim to not like. So, like, some of these things are so dumb. We got things where politicians are having affairs, but because they're so prevalent in their party, that even people who are strong religious right are still backing these people, even though they broke a number of commandments. What about judges, for example, ones who take dives, ones who manipulate their own income through the stock market? They're basically taking advantage of insider information, gifts, and other things that make you question their impartiality. Where are we not being angry about this? Like, I don't care what party you're of. The judges are supposed to be impartial. I get it. You know, this guy might be conservative. This guy might be a liberal. This woman might be centrist or whatever. Why are we not more angry about this on all sides? These are things that we should be concerned with. But because these people have specific standing, we're not. There should not be exceptions to any rule of this nature. But yet we're allowing it. And why are we allowing it? Because information blasts us in the face. It comes at us really fast. It comes from everywhere. And we're not getting all the facts. Some people are just easier to blindly follow whatever they're told. That's why I stopped being a Democrat. I spent 20 years, 10 years, I don't remember. The moment I was voting, I was a Democrat. 15 years. I had to think about that. The parties here where I live, they're not like as vitriol as the federal or the national parties are. They get along, they participate in events together, but they still have their ideologies focused on whatever areas are in particular focused on for this area of, I live in Ohio, North Central Ohio. And there's just some policies I can't get behind because while they benefit a lot of people, they ignore the minority. They ignore the poor, you know. And I'm like, well, we're doing all this spending, but we're not helping the people who really need it. For example, my town redid the entire street area, made it all fancy in downtown area, and then they emptied out the coffers to do it. Nobody said no, or as far as I'm aware, nobody said no. But I mean, like, why? Like, that money could have been better spent, you know, somewhere else. Pave the road, great. That happens every few years anyway. But to do all of this work, it just makes no sense to me. Why are we wasting money on projects that should not exist? Like, we received money from a lawsuit against drug companies, and are we using that to support mitigation of the fentanyl, etc., helping people who need it? No, that money went and got spent and other quote unquote related items, but frankly, they weren't related. Police cars are not related. Police dogs are not. There's actually a list on how to use that settlement money, and government just ignore it, or they find ways to skirt around it. They'll cut budgets and then reallocate the money to fill in the budget gaps because they can reallocate that budgetary money originally somewhere else. And while I realize I'm going on a slight tangent here, the point is we are falling away from the point of gradual movement. One party says something, the other party says something, and then they negotiate on a middle road that best benefits most of the people in this country. And there is just so much misinformation and so much, what do we call them? I want to say posse. That's not the word. Cliques. There's so many cliques now that if you're not part of one, you're not part of the other. And then we get these blank in name only stuff. And I'm like, oh my. So the people who are, I mean, frankly, look at their behaviors. They're the worst. Democrat and Republican worst. Somehow got the popular kids clique while all the geeks and nerds are sitting and eating at the lunch tables by themselves. I don't get how politics ended up the way it. Well, I mean, I actually do understand. I said again, the internet, it's too easy to put out the wrong things, and people just don't want to do the work to investigate it. And I guess that's the lesson here. Don't be anti-woke. Be pro-progress. We want to progress as a society. We want to move forward. We don't want the things to be status quo. If something should be changed, it should be changed. We shouldn't ignore it because you're not familiar with it. I don't like it or something. If it benefits more than it negatively impacts, it's a good thing. If you really need to bring it down from the macro to the micro, if it doesn't negatively impact you, you shouldn't be against it. So that is how I keep that's how I tell my family, it's how I keep my sanity. You focus on what you can handle, what impacts you. And that's how we avoid this way the political environment is now. And again, I think the use of being woke as a derogative is weird because wokeism is progressivism, but yet progressivism is still separately. Technically, any word could be derogative if used correctly. Just gonna leave that out. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Really, if it doesn't directly impact you, does it really matter to you? If it doesn't directly impact your family, does it really matter? And one thing I do tell my family also is, outside of our local government, pretty much a lot of what the state and federal government doesn't actually directly impact us. Yeah, sure, we got, COVID relief things, whatever. But as long as you keep it to the micro, you keep focused on yourself and your family, then all of these big things you hear about at the state and federal level, don't worry about them. Just filter them out. You can blast all this information, focus locally. That's where your attention should be. Tell me in the comments your thoughts on this video. Did you like what you saw, and how was your experience with it? Thanks for watching, and please remember to like and subscribe.